anything like that. Also, in corporate America, one thing that's nice is you can hide. Mistakes, a lot of times are low penalty. You have a lot of time to learn and make it through projects. So some of the drawbacks to corporate life, there is a lot of paperwork. You can fill out many TPS reports because people have time. There's managers that need to get their spin in, and they need the time to figure it out, so they put things in to slow down progress, just to keep it so that they can manage it. If you are a sharpshooter, if you're, you go to Santa Barbara, but if you're that guy that really wants to make it through, sometimes they'll be like, whoa, you're just a scientist one. So you really shouldn't be doing this. I know you're really interested in taking on this project, but that's for a senior side. That's in about 5 years you should be doing that. If you're starting to hear that at your corporate job, that is a clue that you need to leave, because you need to go ahead and keep getting yourself going. You will stagnate if you let yourself. Another drawback of corporate life, which actually is part of startup life as well, but there are lots of politics. But because in corporate America there is, probably 5 times the management and probably 20 times the amount of procedures that you see in a startup, there are lots of political moves, there's lots of pet projects. You need to be aware of that, you need to stay clear of it. If you get on someone's bad side just because they like someone else more, you could be done. You need to find a new job. The pace, it's slow, it's steady. That could be good, right? You get promotions every couple years. You get your 2% raise. If that's what you're into, it's great. For me, it's stifling. And for a lot of these people here, that's the way it is. All right, entering startup. There is lots of project work. You see those reactors. I designed those reactors. I am 5 years out of school. I did it when I was 3.5 years out of school. All those things that we learned in senior design, we learned that you need to do them. You didn't actually learn what you really need to do. So I had to take that responsibility, because Mark said, hey, you're in charge of reactions. So here's the thimble, and we'll see what we can do. I'd like the next scale to be 5 gallons an hour. So it's like, okay, we'll build and design a 5-gallon-an-hour system. And we did. And concurrently, because it's a startup, and we did everything that Mark's talking about in 13 months, which when you're talking about ordering those reactors, that's a 6 months lead time. We had to do things a little bit concurrently, building on top of each other. But in addition, we did that. So we're talking metallurgy studies, we're talking figuring out what a class 2,500-pound flange is, because I didn't know what a class 2,500 flange is compared to a class 150 flange, and what the difference is between 304 stainless steel and 316 and carbon steel and everything else. But it's one of those things. You take the responsibility, you grow, and you make it happen. Another thing that's great about startups is you get to innovate, and you get to try new things. Now, the money that's available in corporate America, there's a lot of red tape with it. In startup America, you've got money. You have a big old bucket. Don't spend it all in one place, but you have the money to kind of buy the wrong pump once, because I did that. And, it happens. And the pump that we got, we thought it would be great, and it was terrible. And it swelled, and it didn't have the right materials of compatibility, even though all of their product studies showed that it did. But you go, you learn, you make it happen, you go from there. There's high reward potential. The leadership opportunities in a startup. I got to run our boot camp program. That's interns. 6 interns came and reported to me one day. And it's like, I don't even have time to get my work done right now. But now I have 6 interns, and they all need projects, and they all have things to do. You have freedom. I've been to work in my pajamas, but the reason that I was at work in my pajamas is because I spent the night on the floor to make sure that the reactor shut down properly, because that's what you need to do. So if you're like, man, I don't know, this is full disclosure. Another great thing about working with startups is you are working with startup people. And a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, that's the A team. And you have a ball because you have all these people, all these ideas that know how to get things done. All right, so what are some of the drawbacks of working at a startup? Well, they kind of tie right into the benefits. So lots of project work, you have minimum resources. Our entire engineering department is 4 people. That's it. And we have no free time, basically. Like when you get it and you make it when you can, but when I come home from a trip from Idaho, I don't know if I'm gonna get to be back for 2 days or 7 days or once even 2 months. But I live week by week knowing, and that's just what you have to do. So when Mark said, you can't get married, you can't be having a kid, he's right. Like, I have a hard time staying in touch with my roommates. So it's just one of those things. Another thing about startups, the innovation's great, but it's innovate or die. We had an investor tour last week, and our furnace pilot light just stopped working. And we had to call it, we had to jumper, like basically hotwire our furnace so that it could start up because the part went bad. But if you don't go and sit and think through all those details and come up with something because you have someone showing up in an hour and a half and they are gonna make a decision on whether or not they give you $10 million, that's not the one type of thing where you can just go ahead and call home and say, oh, sorry, boss, like, couldn't get the furnace to go. You have to figure it out. So the innovate or die is really true. And so there's a lot of risk involved. There's a lot of like, I've had meetings where I've literally told people like, oh my gosh, I just lost like 2 years of my life because that was so stressful. But I've also qualified it. They're the diaper years. We don't really need those anyway at the end. So might as well have these stressful times and live through it because it's exciting. It energizes you. Even though you are dead. We worked from January until April with 0 days off. And when I say 0 days off, I don't mean, oh, we got Saturdays and Sundays off. I mean, I guess I got to have 1 day off because I was at the emergency room because I had strep throat. And the reason it's like, why is that an emergency? I had to be at work the next day. So we had to figure it out. That was an emergency. We got it done. But there is a lot of things with that where you are washed out, like you are drained beyond belief, but you're invigorated by the fact that you are doing something that no one else in the world has ever done. There's a high risk potential. You know, the risk reward, right? If it was all high reward, everyone would be doing it, right? Everyone would be millionaires. But there's a lot of risk involved. But you guys are young. Like, what do we really have to lose? When I talked to Mark about wanting to come, he's like, you know, it's risky. It's like, so what? I lose the house that I've had for 2 years. Who cares, right? It really doesn't matter. Well, what happens? Like which hasn't happened, but you know, what is the risk potential? And you really have to sit down with yourself and weigh what that is. There's uncertainty. I told you about the uncertainty of time. There's also the uncertainty of whether or not you're gonna have a job in the next month. I've worked at this company for a couple years. You know, there's not promotions. There's not those times where you sit down, you get your 2% raise, because that stuff, it should be, and you should feel this yourself, it should be a drop in the bucket. You know, who cares about a 2% raise when you have, you know, stock options and you're vesting in a company that might go somewhere? Because if you're caring about the 2% raise, then you really don't believe in your company, and then you really shouldn't be working there anyway. There's also the stock option thing, though. It's a problem, right? Because it's a perpetual carrot. It's always just out of reach. You know, I could jump, it's not there yet. So you have to keep working, you have to keep striving to get it done. All right, so you guys are still in college. You only get to play the I graduated from college card once. So I know people, one person was so impressed with himself because he went and he worked at a company where he was the only engineer. Who's his Dumbledore? Who's his Ron? Who's his Hagrid? You know, he's not gonna learn much of anything. He's been there now 2 years, and he's seeing, I'm not learning anything. I'm doing the exact same thing. Yeah, it was cool to be like, oh yeah, I'm the head engineer, but what do you really get? You know, you are starting, this is just like the tip of the iceberg, right? You are starting the first step in a 1,000-mile journey, and you need to make sure that you prepare yourself the right way. So corporate, it's a great place to learn the ropes. If I had to do everything over again the way I did it, I would, because I learned a lot. I started out, I found the people and resources I needed. Also, it helps because, I know things that I wouldn't have necessarily known jumping right into a startup. But don't stagnate. Don't stay there forever if you see that it's not going anywhere. If they're already telling you, okay, that's a little too advanced for, I know you can handle it, but it's not really the right role for you yet, it's time to go. As far as joining a startup, there's different rounds of a startup. There's A, B, C round. We got into a little bit, but basically, you want to kind of see how many engineers there are, because you have to consider your experience. You want to see and make sure that you have that ability to get the experience you need from other people. Because, if in 5 years you went and worked at a company and then you go to try and transfer to a different company and you don't know jack, you can't go ahead and tell people, oh, well, my last company, they didn't really teach us that much. No, you have to learn it right off the bat. You have to make the right decision right out of college, because it sets you up for what direction you take from now on. So if you're going to go to a startup, make sure they have enough engineers. Make sure they have enough people to spend time on you so that you can get what you need out of it. All right? Thanks for your time.